Page one, page one, page one, page one, page one, page one, page one. Young philosophy, loud noises, people partying, and music playing in the background. Suddenly, gunshots had rang. Finally, gunshots had stopped. Damn it, them hoodlums out there shooting again, the bartender yells loudly while picking up the broken champagne glass that he had shockingly dropped onto the kitchen floor. Man, I can't wait until they clean up these filthy streets, the club owner replies while looking out the club's bar windows to a man shot dead, lying in a pool full of blood in the middle of the streets, as bystanders had yelled and ran. Yeah, that's how it was in my hood. Crazy, huh? But hold up. Let me rewind from the beginning as I take you through the untold journeys of young philosophy. Enjoy, 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 enjoy. Birmingham, Alabama. That's where I was from. I also happen to be the youngest out of 5 brothers and 3 sisters. I had even more siblings by way of my father, whose name was Billy Shelton. I would always hear the most legendary stories of him having so much money that he would burn bank rolls full of cash, driving Rolls Royces, and owning lots of homes, living life to its fullest. He and my mom had separated when I was only a few months old, and he had happened to have passed away in his early 50s before I had had any chances of truly getting to know him. I was not able to attend the funeral at the time, and I hardly had any memories besides the pictures that he had given me at the age of 12 from when I happened to go and visit my family from down south. One of them happened to be a picture of me sitting on his lap with an unlit cigar in my mouth, a navy blue Air Force suit on, and my afro out. I was around 2 or maybe 3 years of age at the time. Page 3. Young Philosophies. Since my mom was the only one working at the time and had 8 kids, we did not have it all growing up. So she did what she could, and her boyfriend had helped. My mom's boyfriend name was KC. KC had cared for all of my brothers and sisters, and almost every other weekend, he would take us out to eat or shopping. My mom's boyfriend was well known in the hood, and as kids, we did not know what for. Although everywhere we would go, they would call him OG. He was feared and well respected. We grew up in the southern parts of Birmingham, Alabama, in a rough neighborhood where there was excessive drug trafficking and high crime rates. My neighborhood was like any other hood. They would get it how they live, no matter what, due to the poverty and other circumstances that they may have come across. Page 4. Young Philosophies. I wonder how long it will last, my big brother Kevin would ask. It seems, even when you try to make a positive change for the better, somehow you get convicted of all types of false accusations, and everyone attacks you, from left to right. Yeah, some people just plain evil, my big brother would say. My big brother was a straightforward, tell it how it is type of man, just trying to succeed in life. And let him tell it, those type of people are going to try to keep you down regardless. My big brother had always told me to keep my head up and stay true to myself. He even had taught me and the rest of my brothers and sisters how to fight and hold our guards. He was a great brother and a friend that would give you the shirt off his back if he had to. But that talk that we had earlier, I mean, just of the fact that you could be falsely accused is horrifying and unjust. It was crazy, the things people would go through just to live equally and successfully, to survive. Page 5. Young Philosophies. I would hear the craziest stories of police brutality, so I had a bad perspective of cops growing up as a child. But who knew that things could get even worse, as suddenly detectives come rushing into our neighborhood apartment complex, kicking down the back door. Boom! In search of my mom's boyfriend, KC. Turns out that he had a warrant out for his arrest for a kidnapping and a murder and was a fugitive out on the run. He had also had a $150,000 cash reward out for whoever that had found him or had knew his whereabouts. Turns out the police had got their lead from a caller around the neighborhood earlier that morning. No one had known who received the cash reward. And our mom had also gotten taken into custody that evening for questioning. Police figured that she could be a witness or knew more than what she had already told the officers. Page 6. Young Philosophies. This situation caused my siblings to be split up and entered into the children's foster care system, all except me and my oldest brother and 2 sisters. The judge had ruled that we live with our grandmother, who stayed in a city known as Cleveland, Ohio to be exact. We call it Bleed Land, just at the fact, with so many homicides in the city, it was hard to keep count. At the age of 4, I stayed in the projects, known as Morris Black Projects, or as we call it, the trenches. Later that evening, me and my grandmother had received a phone call saying that my mom will be held in police custody for a couple months due to her past warrants she had encountered with the law. As far as my mom's boyfriend, KC, he ended up getting convicted with life in prison and no parole. It was crazy how we would hear the most treacherous stories of him and his crew fighting and getting thrown in the hole, all while doing time. Page 7. Young Philosophies. As a few months had gone past, and now that my mom had finally relocated to Cleveland, she still had to get herself reestablished due to her past run-ins she had encountered with the law. And in the hood, every day and night it was something crazy going on. Even my mom and sister had to knock a few chicks out in the hood. In my hood, the drug dealers and addicts had took over. Our neighborhood was off the hook. Everybody wanting something for nothing. Zombies outside, scheming and jacking everywhere you would go. My brothers and my sisters was really all we had growing up. And as kids, even though we seen a lot at a young age, we just tried to see the best out of life while taking the good with the bad, knowing one day we would make it out. It was crazy how I already had family and affiliates that I was meeting for the first time. I was a wild young boy growing up, just turning 5 years of age, and I had already made a name in the streets. They would call me BAD, and it stood for Badass Dre. Page 8, Young Philosophies. I was a badass kid growing up, out of the streets of Alabama. And even though I was bad, I was spoiled. I would wait for my grandma to go to work, and while my sister was asleep, I would hop inside my Army fatigue Power Wheel Jeep and hang on the block with Freddie Mac the Pimp and all the rest of the hustlers. I remember when I first had got it, I had taken it up on the block so all the homies could see it. Some days, I even would have a job on the block. The OGs would pay me to do things like be the lookout for the cops in front of the corner store, or maybe run a few errands. And that was my hustle as a child. To me, they weren't bad guys, just some regular everyday people, just trying to feed their families and survive. Page 9, Young Philosophies. If I wasn't running around in the streets being a badass, I was running around being a badass in school. I was in the hallways skipping school in the 5th grade. I was trashing bathrooms, talking back, and disturbing the class. I don't know how many times I had been called into the principal's office. I had attended a school known as A.J. Rickoff. I was so bad that eventually it had gotten to a point where they would let me assist in the principal's office and answer the phone until the end of the day. In a loud, dragging voice, I would say, "A.J. Rickoff, may I help you?" And that's what we would say when we would answer the phone. Page 10, Young Philosophies. One day, my sister had called up to the school to check in on me to see how my day was going, and I happened to have answered the phone, all while flirting with my school assistant's principal, Miss Caramel. Ever since I could remember, I always have been attracted to an older woman. Plus, she was so fine, she could blow a blind man's mind. I was so bad that eventually I had gotten prescribed with a drug called Ritalin, a drug physicians prescribe to kids with hyperactions to calm them down and supposedly treat ADHD. My sister did not like me taking the meds. My grandmother had said I was not acting like myself. My sister tried hard to maintain with me and my niece, all while going to school and working. And our grandmother was up in age and was not able to watch us most of the time. This resulted into my sister getting me and my niece a personal babysitter, which did not last long due to the babysitter and her careless actions. I also think she had something against me. I mean, I was always on punishment or taking naps while others had played and had fun. On top of that, the babysitter was not feeding us properly or changing the kids' diapers on time. And that was just enough once my sister had found out. Page 11. Young Philosophies. One thing about my brothers and my sisters was that they did not play about their family or therefore anybody that they had cared about. Let's just say you did not want to mess with them. Yet it was crazy how things could happen so fast, seeing how a few days later, walking down the street on the way to the corner store, one of my sisters happened to have had an altercation with two of the most known drug dealers from around the area. They was beating up on a chick that she had knew from around the neighborhood. When she had stopped and confronted them, one of the drug dealers had pulled out a 9mm handgun from underneath his waistline and proceeded to pull the trigger, shooting into a nearby parked car, sitting on side of the road, hitting the driver of the vehicle. Luckily, as his gun jams, my sister then reaches underneath her black leather jacket and proceeded to shoot him twice, once in the leg and another in the thigh. As blood had gushed from his body onto the concrete, his friend yells, "Hey fool, hurry up, hop in," while starting the engine to his old school Cadillac. As they then had pulled off into the busy intersection, the chick then yells in a loud voice, Thank you so much to my sister, while running off into an extremely dark alleyway while gasping for air. Page 12. Young Philosophies. Soon enough, as my sister comes running back into the house with a puzzled look onto her face after hearing the police sirens, she flew right past us so fast, bumping into the hallway closet door, bruising her collarbone, as she then proceeds down the basement stairs and tucks the smoking hot handgun underneath an old dusty bar stand behind a wooden staircase. The block was hot, and police was asking questions, but no one seemed to have had any answers. With everything going on around the neighborhood at the time, my sister had then immediately booked the next flight to California to lay low for a while, or at least until things had settled down within the neighborhood. And with my mom still getting situated within the courts at the time, I was not able to live with her just yet. Page 13. Young Philosophies. With my sister being gone and my grandma at work had meant I was able to have more freedom. I was constantly getting into trouble and in and out of juvenile. But ever since that day that my grandmother happened to have found out about the gun that I kept up underneath the bed, that was my last straw. This had resulted into me also entering into the children's foster care system, along with the rest of my brothers and sisters. When I had first arrived at my first foster home, it was cool at first, but soon enough, things had gotten crazy. I was only 6 years of age and had witnessed pain and suffering by my first foster mom, who was also consistent into going to church. This was the meanest lady that I have ever encountered. She made me eat foods I did not like to eat. I had to clean up her dog shit and wash everyone's dishes. I was not too far from being a slave child, not to mention, when she would pinch you, that it would be so hard that your skin would peel off. My foster mom also had another foster child, and her birthday was a week before mine. And if there was any cake and ice cream left over, they would try to give it to me for my birthday. Page 14. Young Philosophies. It was hard trying to talk to the social workers when they had came by to see how things were going. My foster mom would always say, "What happens in this house, stays in this house." And if I had ever told anything that goes on in the house, that I would be in a lot of trouble. So when the social workers had came by to visit, I wouldn't say much. I damn near kept my mouth shut the whole time. I had felt interrogated by the way that my foster mom would look at me out of the corner of her eyes. Deep down inside, all I really wanted to say was, "Set me free." I eventually had to break free of my foster home, and eventually I did. My foster mom's foster daughter happened to have had a crush on me, and eventually we happened to have gotten caught dry humping with our clothes on in the upstairs attic. Our foster mom wasn't too proud about that, but hey, that's what happens when you try to feed a player week-old cake and ice cream. You dig? Page 15. Young Philosophies. I was now at my second foster home at 7 years of age. I stayed on a street called St. Clair, one of the most known dangerous hoods out of Cleveland, Ohio. City of Young Philos, Avant, Bone Thugs and Harmony, and many others. It wasn't too bad though, seeing how I've been growing up in the hood for half of my life. My foster mom name was Dee Dee. She was an older woman in her early 50s that had gotten around really good for her age and was extremely healthy and wealthy, that her 2-car garage consists of Audis, Infinitis, and Lincoln Town cars. She was what I would call a real church woman. She had made sure I had prayed and had gone to church every Sunday. I also would be dressed up in a mad fly suit and tie, along with some freshly polished Stacey Adams on, receiving all the compliments from the older folks. We usually went out to dinner afterwards with a few people from the church. Dinner was usually at a restaurant that was known as Hometown Buffet, all you can eat. This kind of living was new to me, and I wasn't as wild as I used to be. Page 16. Young Philosophies. My foster mom also had a boyfriend at the time. Around this time, I didn't know older people still used the title of boyfriend and girlfriend until I had met them. His name was Andy Malone. He said that he was also related to Karl Malone, the basketball player. He was in his late 50s, a little older than my foster mom. My foster mom's boyfriend had offered tree and home repairing services for various areas around the neighborhood. Some days, if I happened to have been suspended from school or out for summer vacation, I would run routes with him and unload the truck at the scrap yard. I would usually make from at least $200 to $300 a day, depending on the circumstances. Page 17. Young Philosophies. My foster mom also had 2 sons up in age, neither close to my age. Marlon who had a family of his own, and Leon, who had no kids and lived in the upstairs attic. Marlon thought I was too cool, and he would always tell me to never change and to always remain the same. He also had 5 daughters and 3 sons, and if there were ever anyone around my age who had a problem with them, he would come and get me to handle it, and then pay me a nice amount of cash afterwards. That was my dude. He was too cool. Leon, who lived in the upstairs attic, would come downstairs every so often to eat. I would think he had the munchies, how he was always snacking and his eyes was always red. You would think he had done drugs, but I never had witnessed it. Page 18. Young Philosophies. He was a big heavyset guy. I'll say about 6'7", 495 pounds. Sometimes we were cool, but for the most part, I just stayed to myself. I also knew if I had to fight this guy, that I would have possibly had a hard time trying to beat him. But who knew today would change everything, as I happened to have been suspended from school and asleep with the cordless phone underneath me, which he must have been looking for, seeing how soon after the cordless phone starts to page loudly, suddenly awaken me. He then comes storming into the room, throwing me onto the floor, kicking me in the stomach, and then proceeds to grab the cordless phone and leaves the room, leaving behind a broken, empty crack pipe. This is when I knew he was really on drugs, and we were not cool ever since. Page 19. Young Philosophies. When my foster mom had arrived home, and I had told her what had happened, he had denied it, and she did not believe me. She said that if he had kicked me, that my bruise would have looked worse than what it already had. I couldn't just let this slide. I had immediately called up my family, and her son had started receiving threats from all around the hood, and things had gotten a little out of hand for a while. Eventually, things began to settle down once I had told my family to chill. My foster mom also had a younger sister in her 40s that lived downstairs from us. Her name was Almeda. She was cool as ever, and her favorite drink was scotch. Sometimes I would go downstairs and chill with her and write my raps and read magazines while she talked about folks we had knew. She had always kept it real, and we always had a blast. She didn't like that 6-foot giant that lived in the upstairs attic either, and that was her nephew. Page 20. Young Philosophies. When I was not downstairs, I was usually outside on St. Clair. Around this time, a guy named Bean was the OG in our hood. He was well known in his hood also. He almost reminded me of KC, how he was well respected. He would also throw block parties and barbecues for the neighborhoods and have card games, pool parties, vendors, and etc. Some of the most beautiful women, most famous musicians, and top-notch pimps and players would come through and show love to our hood. Sometimes, with all the excessive drinking and carrying on, things would get a little out of hand and fights would break loose. And if and when it did, Bean was always there to calm things down. He also made sure all the guys on the block would shoot the fair ones, meaning box it out instead of getting jumped or shot at. Bean was a real OG in our hood, and everybody loved him. Page 21, Young Philosophies. Beam was even the reason me and my crew had even adopted our street name, known as Bow Gang, just from the simple fact that as kids, we would like to play around with bow and arrows and slingshots. I mean, me and the homies could have been known for several other occasions, from shooting pool, playing basketball, boxing, to even rocking the latest fashion. But ever since a couple of the homies happened to go on a crazy arrow shooting rampage, striking a couple people that they had encountered from back in the day, and unfortunately, that's the name that my crew had been labeled with ever since. My crew was off the hook, and I was always fighting. One day, while walking inside the neighborhood's corner store, some off-brand dude tried provoking me, trying to shout in front of some of the guys around the neighborhood. I turned around and broke his nose. Minutes later, he was telling the homies that I didn't make his nose bleed and that it was his high blood pressure. Seeing how I was always taught to be humble, I said, "Yeah, okay," and kept it moving. All I know is that his nose was leaking for a minute, or at least until the ambulance had arrived. Page 22, Young Philosophies. I never had started anything, but I had always finished it. And even though I was young, I could still give an old school ass whooping. I always have been a young brave man with heart. It was in my blood, from going to church to dealing with demons outside of church. I had to whoop a lot of asses growing up, and I had gained a lot of respect just because of it. Because seeing how on the streets of St. Clair, or therefore anywhere else you go, people are going to try to provoke you nowadays, whether it's for social media or just to fulfill their own self-ignorant desires. Pull your card is what they call it. And even though I was being raised different from most, I didn't let anybody treat me like a slouch or less than. Page 23, Young Philosophies. We damn near fought every day on the streets of St. Clair. I even smoked my first blunt and received my first truancy ticket skipping Glenville High School when one of the homies from St. Clair and his crew. We had gotten caught up in a crazy ass shootout with some of the dudes from the other side that happened to have usually purchased drugs from my homeboy Sancho. As an all-black minivan comes creeping up slowly down the street, 3 masked gunmen hopped out the side doors of the unmarked vehicle, shooting into my homeboy Sancho's direction. Luckily, as I had stashed the CX-9 submachine gun that Sancho had just given me underneath the bushes, I then ran back to the scene, shooting out the back windows of the minivan. Suddenly, the driver then speeds off into a busy intersection, eventually crashing into an iron light pole. We could have died that day, but thank God that we didn't. We had gotten really geeked up later that night, but hey, that's how it goes on the streets of St. Clair. Page 24, Young Philosophies. Unlike most kids my age, I didn't smoke tobacco or join a gang. I figured I was cool enough. My partners and I, we was not like most crews. We did our own thing, and there wasn't one man above the other. We were all kings on a mission. We were all bossed up, and you couldn't tell us nothing. We was down for each other no matter what. When it came to being in these streets, along with all of the shootouts and the court cases, Nobody had snitched. My crew was solid and loyal, built on honesty and trust, something true homies would never break. As I had gotten older in age, my foster mom had seen me and Leon really wasn't getting along, so my foster mom and her boyfriend had suggested that I come live with him for a while, or at least until I have gotten of age to live on my own. Page 25. Young Philosophies. I called him Granddad. He had taught me mostly everything that I had knew, like how to cook, clean, pay bills, be respectful, and most importantly, how to carry myself. We had stayed on 118th and Wade Park, which was cool. Plus one of the homies stayed right around the corner from me on 112th block in Superior. We've been cool ever since back in elementary school, when we both happened to have been in after-school detention for fighting the same group of guys within the same day. We were cool ever since. As time had gone on, we eventually had the same classes together. My homie was the class clown that had everybody laughing, and I was the quiet dude in the cut, just peeping everything out. Dude was mad smart though. You know, the type to be the first to get their work done, then distracts the whole classroom from learning. Yeah, that was my dog. After school, if I wasn't too busy, I would kick it with CTL, Cleveland the label. That was my homies' crew. They had the music game on lock, from the north throughout the south. If we wasn't playing the PS5 or shooting some hoops, we would be up in the studio recording music or shooting random music videos for different artists throughout the neighborhoods. Page 26. Young Philosophies. Me and the crew also had a couple big homies growing up that had lived nearby. When I fought, they fought. When they fought, I fought. If I had $1, they had one too. That's just how it was in the hood. Them was my dogs. Although that one time, when suddenly one of the homies happened to yell out, "Hey yo, Tank Booty," to one of the biggest and tallest girls attending high school at the time, and he had told her it was me. Man, I was trying to avoid her at all costs. And luckily, I did. Other than that, me and the homies was cool. After school, if me and the squad wasn't walking down the street trying to mack a few chicks back to the crib, we would usually call up my homie's big brother, Semi, or my big brother, D-Ace, and they would pick us up in either that candy blue or red old school drop-top Chevy. They would be blasting them 32-inch subwoofers, shaking up the whole block, ensuring everybody heard us coming. Page 27. Young Philosophies. Eventually, me and my crew had gotten kicked out of high school. Almost every day, we would get into it with some dudes from the other side. A few of us had got sent to a school called Wilson Military, which was crazy, since me and my crew had damn near went to every school together from 6th grade all the way up to high school. Since the crew was smaller and we had now gotten splitting up, had meant we really had to tighten up. And even though we was not a gang, me and my crew was blowing up fast, and everywhere we would go, we was known as Bow Gang. My partners was even around when I had first found out that my closest cousin BJ had passed, which had taken a major toll over the family, especially my brother Ace, who was really messed up over the situation, and I had begun to start caring less. I even had bought my first silver and black Desert Eagle and had purchased my first package of marijuana and started hustling nicks and dimes out of the back porch of an abandoned crib on 146th Street in Kinsman that had eventually accumulated into packs. In due time, the game was getting serious. Page 28. Young Philosophies. No matter what had happened, I had always managed to get my schoolwork and other responsibilities taken care of before anything. My crew and I solved everything, and nobody wanted problems with us. We weren't bad kids. We just liked to have fun. Like I said, we was usually doing something productive, like writing raps, making beats, attending a game, or just plain hustling, trying to make some cash. One of my homies used to check a chick purse while the other was having relations with her. Yeah, we done did it all. At that time, we did not care how we got it or whose it was, just as long as we could spend it. As we had gotten older in age and had accumulated even more status in the streets, we had found out that hard work pays off and that the money gets even better by simply working towards your goals, along with hard work and dedication. Page 29. Young Philosophies. Around this time, I stopped hanging in my hood on St. Clair. I hung on 146th Street in Kinsman, or as we call it, Killer Central. My block was hot, with robberies, shootouts, murders, you name it. But somehow, today just seemed to be a good day. No shootouts, no police sirens, and everything was going just as planned. I had even made an extra $3,000 profit from hustling t-shirts off my block. Later on that evening, me and a chick named Mariah from school and one of the homies from around the way happened to have gotten too drunk and had ended up racing two stolen Chevy Camaros down 105 and South Central Street projects. Just so happens, the vehicles happened to be hijacked a couple nights before and had been left abandoned on the side of the road. As we had then continued to speed off through the night, circling donuts drastically throughout the neighborhood streets, we then had eventually made a quick stop to figure out our next destinations. Suddenly, as things had taken a drastic change, as police pull up directly behind us while demanding that we step out of the stolen vehicles with our hands up, I knew right then that that wasn't an option, and apparently Mariah had thought the same thing. As I look over to Mariah, she says, "I know we didn't come this far to risk it all." She then adds, "As you know, my father is a police officer, and if my dad or school finds out about tonight, I could be in a lot of trouble, or even worse, I can potentially lose my scholarship for school." At this point, we really didn't have any time to chat, as I look Mariah dead into her eyes and say, in a non-hesitant voice, Calm down. Fasten your seatbelt. Page 30. Young Philosophies. As I had then taken one more glance into my peripheral and took a deep breath, I had then mashed onto the gas, speeding off as the burning rubber had filled the air from the smoking hot skid marks that I had engraved onto the concrete streets. I also had a gun, drugs, and a taser on me that I had eventually given to Mariah to hold on to for me for the meantime. She had also ran track and had won numerous rewards for her high school, and for some reason, I just knew that she could get away extremely fast. Fortunately, as I had drift left to right, in and out of traffic, yet and still with no cops in sight, I then had managed to bust a right turn into a dark pitch black alleyway while quickly assisting Mariah out of the stolen vehicle. As I had then proceeded to drift in and out of traffic lights, stop signs, and bystanders, it just so happened to be raining previously that night. Therefore, suddenly, when I had approached a curb turn, the stolen vehicle had spun out of control, hitting an extremely large oak tree, damaging the front, side, and rear end of the vehicle. Page 31. Young Philosophies. With the police behind me and the sirens on, I had then hopped out of the stolen vehicle and had ran to the nearest hideout, jumping over a fence into a resident's backyard, as I then had hid behind two black trash bags. Police were then starting to surround the area, and in the meantime, I was thinking of how I could escape safely without alarming the cops or getting shot at by an officer. As I then had grabbed the two black trash bags that I was sitting behind, I had managed to proceed up front as if they were mine. Suddenly, in a loud, aggressive voice, I hear, "Police, get on the ground." And all I had saw was red and blue lights flashing and police officers aiming guns directly towards me as police officers come rushing and tackling me onto the ground while aggressively putting handcuffs onto my wrists. I had gone to jail that night, but I had most definitely made bail that morning. Page 32. Young Philosophies. I had hopped so fast out of the stolen vehicle when it had crashed that I happened to have forgotten my cellular phone. One of my partners had said when he had called in to check up on me that one of the officers had answered my phone, and he had said that he was whipping my ass. But forget the cops. Back then, carjacking was a hobby from my hood. Eventually, as days had went on and my court date had gotten closer, the judge had assigned me on to a year of probation along with attending community service for a couple months, which eventually had caused me to settle down, knowing I had needed to get my life together before it was too late. Page 33. Young Philosophies. It's like, ever since my closest cousin BJ had passed away, things just wasn't the same, and everything was falling apart. On top of that, my granddad happened to have gotten sick around that same time and ended up having to check into a nursing home. I would used to go and visit him every weekend up until his passing. It would feel bad just leaving him there, seeing how he would always tell me to take him with me, knowing if I could, I would. I just wasn't in the best position at the time. Page 34. Young Philosophies. Over time, and now that my mom and the courts had finally gotten everything situated, I had began staying with her off 71st Street. When I had moved to 71st Street, it had felt like family and had reminded me of down south, how everyone would look out for one another. I even threw a few block parties and fed my whole hood like Ben would do on St. Clair. It was much love. As a few years went past, and now that I was staying with my mom and her motivating me and keeping me focused, I was now able to expunge my felony and start a new legit clothing line business. On top of that, one of my homies from Bowtie had just so happened to have been released from doing a couple years in the state penitentiary. So me and the homies had to step out and do it big. We had partied hard that night. We had even hit up a few bars and strip clubs and had invited a few of the most top-notch ratchet chicks onto the yacht for the night. It was lit, and yeah, we had a blast. Page 35. Young Philosophies. Around this time, my clothing line SV and my production company Bowtie Records seemed to be taking off quite faster than I had expected. I also ended up having two precious baby girls by a woman named Rihanna, whom I had first happened to have met downtown at the Ritz-Carlton, located in Washington, D.C., where both her and her super fine-ass girlfriend had both worked there as the general managers. When I would fly out of town to close business deals, right before I would leave and return home, I would go and visit Rihanna, and she would set up reservations for us at luxury hotels while eating at the finest restaurants and dressed in the finest attire. We had good times as well as bad times, but somehow it seemed like after she had found out about the relations that I was also having with her girlfriend, things just wasn't the same, and me and Rihanna did not see eye to eye anymore. At this point, even though me and Rihanna did not see things the same, I still had acknowledged that I had two twin baby girls to be taken care of, and if that I did not provide for them, that I would feel less than a man. Page 36. Young Philosophies. I then had personally set up payment plans and numerous arrangements for my twins. And even though me and Rihanna were separated, I still had showed love and support for my family. My family was so proud of me and what I had accomplished over the years that we had celebrated all day. As I go downstairs to grab us another drink, suddenly the phone rings. I answer. Hello? It's my mom's ex-boyfriend, KC, from prison. He had said that he had needed to speak with her as soon as possible, and that he had really missed her. Disturbed over the phone call, I began to think, not this again. I mean, I'm that kid from the projects, and I had already witnessed a rough life in the past, and all I had wanted now was for my family to move on and enjoy life. And even though I knew KC wasn't getting out anytime soon, I still did not want to even think of the thoughts of going backwards in life. I mean, after all of these years, all I had wanted to do now was invest in my life and become something greater. Page 37. Young Philosophies. I was so dazed over the phone call that I had never mentioned to my mom that KC had called. A few months down the line, with business still booming, I had moved me and my family out the hood into a 3-story mansion in the hills, and had also purchased an old school Mercedes-Benz 600 that I would bring out on special occasions. Later that night, me and the crew had hit up the studio to drop some new hits. Lately, we've been making big moves with new releases from Bowtie Records, CTL Semi, Tez Vicious, Ray Bully, Bow Gang, and more. With my first hit single titled Shine on 'Em, followed by 2 more songs titled Hot Boy and Real Niggas, written by me under my stage name, Young Philos. Me and the crew have been putting in major work lately, from networking, promoting upcoming models, actors, actresses, and selling out shows for various music artists of all kinds. Me and my crew have been traveling the world a lot lately and have seen a lot of things at a very young age and what life has to offer. Page 38, Young Philosophies. Till this day, me and my crew have remained loyal and have stayed solid. We out here flying private jets. I'm just playing. But we still out here dressed in the finest attire and driving the fastest cars. And I'm here today to encourage anybody trying to make a change for the better. Screaming, stay focused. You can do anything as long as you put your mind to it. Dream big. Black Boy in the Rough. To be continued. Mom's ex-boyfriend KC breaks out of jail after receiving a tip on who had reported him to the federal investigations for the $150,000 cash reward. Young Philosophies. Album/video coming soon. Check me out. YouTube at Bowtie Records. Instagram at Young Philos 17. Bowtie Records ENT. Copywritten by DeAndre L. McNeely. All rights reserved. This book or any portion thereof may not be used or reproduced in any manner whatsoever without the express written permission of the publisher, except for the use of a brief quotation in a book review. Printed in the United States. First edition. Peace, 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 peace.